Segment 2, Gold and Black Live, and we've got a live one here because he's dealing with this wonderful Indiana weather, and I assume rain where you are in down in the Carmel area, making your way back to West Lafayette. But Tim House, Executive Vice President or Executive Senior Associate Athletic Director, say Associate Vice President for Development at Purdue, and a Grizzly veteran here. He's been here almost 5 years, which is hard to believe that Tim has been in West Lafayette for that period of time. And nothing's changed in athletics at all, Tim. Isn't that amazing how nothing has changed at all in your world, right?
Nothing. Did you choose Grizzly on purpose because I look like Grizzly Adams?
Yeah, I think that was a Freudian deal. I don't know, but
no, time flies when you're having fun, though. I mean, we have had a blast. It's been a really cool time to be in West Lafayette.
Yeah, no doubt. And Tim is a youngster, and Purdue just hired a football coach that's in his age range, I should say. And, just that whole process, you're there front and center looking at that. I mean, obviously your role in fundraising and development is important, but you're looking at the big picture. Talk about Ryan Walters and just that experience of what you like about him and his very, very young and hip staff, so to speak. This is going to be an interesting ride for Ryan and company come right now, but also when the fall gets here and Fresno State comes to town on the 2nd of September.
Well, Al, about the only thing I don't like about Coach Walters and his staff thus far is it's the first time I've ever, been older than our head football coach anywhere I've worked. And that is really a realization that, like, hey, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I'm 37, Ryan's 36. Every single thing that you could evaluate Ryan on up to this point, I've loved. I mean, as a coworker, he's first off, let's just start with the basics. The blocking and tackling, if you will, pun intended. He is a really good human being. Yeah. He is a really nice person. He is considerate of others. He has really taken a great amount of time and interest in getting to know everyone in our department and how they help his program and how we could help them better. He's sort of done listening sessions, and his first week on the job, he had me in his office and wanted to learn who our key stakeholders were, what was the history of the John Purdue Club, how could he help, and made very clear, I want to be involved. I want to get in front of our fan base. I think he's extremely self-aware. I think he's extremely coachable, which you don't often think about that with a head coach, but he knows that he's new at Purdue and he needs to learn certain things about what we've done here up to this point. And he absorbs everything like a sponge and is extremely appreciative and gracious in the process. And I'm really not just saying that. I mean, I mean it. And really his whole staff has kind of fallen in that same line. They're all just really good people. They work really hard. And I think they believe, I know from being around, they believe Purdue can be truly, truly great and do it in a way that everyone's going to be proud of and enjoy being around.
One thing we've talked over the years, even long before you got here, that Purdue in football historically needs to have a better mousetrap. I mean, it's a competitive league, and it's never been easy for any team, and it's not easy necessarily for Ohio State and Michigan, but it's a challenge to stay at that level. Joe Tiller brought an exciting offense. Jeff Brom did that same thing. This is a different take. You got a defensive guy, but I think that relative youth and enthusiasm and the fact that he's gone out and got Graham Harrell, et cetera, you may have a better mousetrap, just a different type of mousetrap heading into that, not only the 2023 season, but down the road.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think Purdue's always going to be pretty darn good at offense. And by the way, we got a great offensive coordinator. I mean, the quarterbacks have traditionally wanted to play here. Skill position players have wanted to play here. And so if you can bring someone in who is of the caliber Graham is to run that side of the ball, I don't worry about us skipping much of a beat. No, and that's no disrespect to Jeff. I obviously know Jeff was a great offensive mind. But, again, I think we have to remember Purdue has always been a place that's attracted great offense long before Jeff was there and is going to long after he leaves. Now, to bring someone in with Ryan's background, though, I think is intriguing because we have never had someone quite this elite nationally in terms of the accolades he had, the numbers he put up last year to Illinois. To me, it's looking like, hey, where are our gaps? Let's go get someone who fills those gaps. But really for me, what it comes down to is the people that Ryan surrounded himself with. If you look at the jobs people left to come work for this guy, it's pretty incredible. I think it speaks volumes. I mean, you've got people leaving big time programs for the same job, not necessarily even taking steps up, but because they believe in him. And I think that's where I find myself most excited. Again, the people he surrounded himself with and the way that they treat people, going back to my previous answer, are really big. And the last thing I'll say, I think he's one heck of a recruiter. I mean, he is. I've got some stories that, I've already heard about, some of the recruiting battles he's won. I mean, Hudson Card's recruiting story is incredible. Someday I'll let Ryan tell that to you someday.
Yeah.
It's just a great story that he went and got who he wanted, and he's Coach Painter always says, what makes a great coach? Great players. And I think that he's pretty smart for saying that. He's smart for a lot of reasons, but I think Ryan subscribes to that theory and his staff subscribes to that theory. And the detail with which they've operated on the recruiting trail and the effort they put into that, I find myself very excited that we're going to be just fine in football. In fact, we're going to keep building this thing even higher than it's been the past couple of years.
Yeah, you look at that and there's a lot of intrigue and a lot of things going on. Ryan seems to me also extremely detail oriented. If you watch him in terms of, and defensive guys can be that way, but detail oriented with an extremely good personality. I've been very impressed in my limited time around him as well. All right, you talked about Matt Painter, another walk in the park for the Boilermakers last night. With a win over Wisconsin. You've been around teams for your professional and personal life. Things happen in the college basketball season, and this has been a wacky one. Purdue has won the Big Ten. They're going to do it in an undisputed fashion for the 13th time. Just a huge win last night. Kind of hard to quantify from a team perspective how important that win is, just to kind of right the ship and get things moving in the direction that you want at the right time of the year. One would think last night has a lot to do with that.
Absolutely. It wasn't a must win. Obviously, we're in a great spot, but as you alluded to, Alan, I think it was a big win. I think Matt spiced some things up a little bit, changed the starting lineup a little bit. I love all of our kids, but it's always nice to see a kid get a chance like Brandon Newman got last night, and see Brandon really step up in a big way defensively and gain some confidence that I think is going to carry into March. His athleticism really is a game changer for us when he's able to be out on the court and stop the other team's, key perimeter scorers. And then, a couple times last night turned it into buckets and then made some big free throws down the stretch. To make those I think making 9 out of those last 10 free throws is huge preparation for March.
Yeah.
Huge preparation for March. And I think we sometimes get lost in the sauce, it was a tough stretch, of 4 or 5 games there. In the grand scheme of things, it's hard not to be pretty excited about going 7-3 in our league non-conference schedule when you think about what that means and how that might translate to March. And it's really hard not to get excited about the fact that this team that wasn't ranked preseason is looking like a 1 seed and has just won the Big Ten title outright. It's been a crazy year. I think they almost built our expectations up so high that we could only be let down if they ever lost, or ever faced any adversity. But in the grand scheme of things, this is a really, really special ball club. I think they're poised to do some great things moving forward. And to your point, Alan, I think last night was a huge, huge deal. By the way, don't want to forget to mention how big a win yesterday was for our women's basketball program.
Absolutely.
That was one of the best finishes to a game. To be down 18 points, come all the way back and hit a game-winning, wasn't quite a buzzer beater, but a 3 to end the game. That was pretty cool. So it was a great day to be a Boilermaker. Not so great for our friends in Madison, Wisconsin, but that's okay.
I think Purdue owes Wisconsin a thing or two. So that's
Amen.
Katie Gerald, and I think you can be a study of personalities. Matt Painter, Katie Gerald's, Ryan Walters. Katie brings a brash confidence to her. She was a terrific player, obviously an All-American level player. Her attire in Bloomington was fun. She brings it to the table. I thought it came out in her team because they didn't play well yesterday. And she said that post game, it was not their best effort in terms of performance. you get the job done, and probably punch your ticket to the NCAA tournament. Again, hard to minimize that in her second year.
What I'll say about Katie, and I'm biased about Katie because she's my neighbor, so I've gotten to know her. But you have to have people on your team and in your organization that hate to lose.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I've learned being around sports my whole life and is, man, everybody likes winning. I don't know anybody who doesn't like winning. But you got to have people who can't sleep at night when they lose, who just losing is not an option. I mean, I think that's how she's so quickly turned the program from where it was to where it is today. And I think she's really bringing her first big time recruiting class next year. So I'm really excited about the future of that program. But what makes me so confident is, I mean, she's just losing is not an option for her, and it's so much it's that way that it's contagious. And that team, and in particular, I think you see a few players on it that have really become an extension of her personality on the court. Abby Ellis and Janae Terry come to mind. But really that whole team has just adopted hey, losing's unacceptable. We can beat anybody. I mean, you look at beating number 2 Ohio State. No one would have seen that coming. And we've got, I think right now, 4 of our top sports. I would say with volleyball and Dave Shondell, Matt with men's basketball, Ryan with football, and then certainly Katie with women's basketball. I think we got 4 people who really just hate to lose and really have a way of getting their whole team to take on that persona. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no doubt. And personalities do it. All right. Your day job is challenging because the great question of raising money, which you've had, we talked offline that you've had a good year from that standpoint, and yet balancing that wonderful balancing act now that NIL is in this world, and you've got to, for lack of a better word, compete for donors, and that may be the wrong way to look at it. But tell me how you look at it and how you manage that, because that is a challenge in today's environment. Because you've got to, in the big picture, both have to be funded in some fashion. You're going to be funding the John Purdue Club side of it, but it certainly is an interesting time to be doing this.
So it's been an interesting time for sure. I think initially, like everyone else, you're kind of skeptical of how this is going to work. How are we going to make this positive, right? And I think what Mike Babinski has done a great job of at Purdue for us is, everything we do is driven by our values. We have to know who we are and what the best version of us is before we really make decisions on anything, right? And I feel as though we've done a great job of taking, I think we were fairly conservative out of the gates, but that's kind of who Purdue is, to be fair. And we've really ramped things up recently in the NIL space with the addition of Ryan. And, some of the things he brought to the table in terms of experiences at other institutions and things that he had been studying up on. And then, you learn a little bit. And then once okay, hey, this fits us. We know we're doing things permissibly. We know we're doing things in a way where we can manage expectations. Because the big thing we don't ever want to do, and I think Coach Painter does a better job of this than anybody in the country. Like, we don't want to sell a young person on an experience they're not going to get. Yeah. Reason we don't have a lot of transfers out of Matt's program, and the reason kids are willing to redshirt is because he's so daggone honest with them on the front end. Nothing is a surprise when you're a Purdue basketball player when you get here. And so with us in the NIL space, we've really tried to adopt that mindset. Now, as far as my role in terms of fundraising, well, we are fortunate. I mean, the Boilermaker Alliance group, the board has been, it's made up of a lot of people who I knew previously that were on Purdue Club members. That, I already had a previous relationship of trust with. And so it's made it pretty easy to work with them and have proper communication. We have the best compliance guy, I think, in the country in Tom Mitchell. He's been at Ohio State and USC, and he's now been at Purdue for, I think, 12 years now. Yeah. And, he's on national committees. He's just really, really good. We're one of the few Power 5 schools that you've just never heard about in the NCAA ledger for the wrong reasons for football or basketball. And Tom's a big part of it. And he's really just helped us navigate the conversations we're having with donors. I mean, put bluntly, Alan, like when a donor says to me, how can I help? I can educate them on how they can help with NIL and how they can help with our, facilities needs, which has been, the basketball locker rooms, the football stadium, the golf course. We've been able to accomplish all those things and have those conversations, but also inform them that, hey, if you do want to get involved in this NIL space, here's who you talk to. And we've been able to trust who we hand them off to. And the reality of it is we need both. You know, I mean, right now the NCAA rules are what they are, and given the structure that's in place, it is paramount that we succeed in our fundraising efforts in the John Purdue Club, but also that Boilermaker Alliance succeeds in their efforts in the NIL space. And right now, I feel like we're doing a really good job. You know, I mean, is anybody perfect? No, but you know, the people who thought that they were the best at NIL coming out of the gates, some of them had pretty darn bad seasons, and some of them are facing sanctions right now as of last. So, you know, I feel great about where we are and being at a place that, you know, that has done it the right way. I mean, I remember my interview at Purdue. I interviewed with Coach Painter, and he said, basically, I'm paraphrasing. He said, Tim, like, if you get this job and you take it, like, you know, people are going to say that they want us to win the national title and make it to the Final Four. He said, tell them two things. Nobody wants it more than me, but we're not going to cut a corner to do it. And he said, because I can live with anyone telling me that I could be a better coach in my recruiting or my scheming. He said, but I can't live with anyone asking me why I compromised their reputation as a Purdue alum by breaking the rules. And that's kind of how we feel about everything we do. So I'm really pleased that we've been able to continue to have a top 5 basketball program, a football team that had the success that they had. Laura, and one of the hottest young coaches in the country, who's got a really elaborate and great NIL plan, work with him to get that plan implemented, bring in a top transfer out of the portal like Hudson Card, you know, show progress in that space, and do it all without breaking any rules and knowing that we're doing everything above board. So long-winded answer, but I'm really pleased with where we're at in that space, Alan.
Yeah, you know, you have a master's degree in sports administration. You've modeled a few uniforms in terms of places you've been. Is this a case that guardrails are going to finally happen, and we're going to and you feel confident that in 3 to 5 years this will be a something that you'll be easier to quantify in terms of what you're dealing with in the NIL space?
Man, I hope so. And I do think there's only one way to go, and that's up. I mean, it was kind of mass chaos when it first opened up. The timing of it, I mean, was really hard. I mean, do I think the NCAA could have done some things differently? Sure. But like, it's easy to armchair quarterback, right? You know, I mean, I would tell you that everyone being at home and being on their cell phones in the middle of a pandemic when this thing hit was absolute worst case scenario. You know, the court of public opinion ran wild and put people in decision-making positions in a very tough spot. I am very excited about our new President Baker at the NCAA. I think anyone, regardless of what your politics are, you know, if you look at his history in politics, to be elected as the governor of Massachusetts, Kennedy's Massachusetts, as a Republican twice, you know, he's got to be somewhat pretty good at being bipartisan, getting things done, you know, in that political realm. And that's what's going to take, because any decision we make is going to have to hold up. You know, anything we do to regulate this is going to have to hold up. It's going to have partnership from DC and at the state level. And he's going to have to navigate and lead that charge. And I think what's been going on the last week or so shows me that he's got a mind to get it done. You know, I think he's an intelligent man. He played basketball at Harvard. He understands student athletes go through, but at the same time, you know, went to one of the institutions that, like Purdue, values academics and the whole student athlete experience at a very high level. So I find myself very optimistic. You know, I'm very glad I'm not in his role at this point in my career. I certainly am not prepared to get it there the way he is, but I find myself very excited about President Baker's leadership and where it's going to take us. And you know, there's just too much good that happens in college athletics for us not to figure it out. I mean, I think we get so caught up all the time and just focusing on the kids on the field. And don't get me wrong, they're my number one priority as a member of this athletics department. But there's so many people, so many young people in the stands that are being inspired to pursue higher education because of these games. You know, grandkids and kids brought to games, or that watch it in living rooms with their grandparents and their parents, that get the idea of, I'm going to go to Purdue because I grew up a Purdue fan, or I got to go to Ross-Ade, I got to go to Mackey Arena. That, man, that's too special for us to mess up. So the long-winded answer, you know, kind of coming full circle on my long-winded answer, is we're absolutely going to get there. We have to. We have to. It's a part of the fabric of this nation to figure this out. And I have full faith that we're going to. You know, it's just like anything new. You're going to hit some growing pains along the way, and I think we're going to get there with it, though.
All right, last question. Got a couple minutes left. Lamar Lundy initiative with John Purdue Club, a new and exciting initiative as well. Really important in the diversity, equity, inclusion as well, space, I should say. Tell us a little bit about that and what fans and not only donors but fans can understand about that project.
Sure. So, I mean, for us, we wanted to do a better job branding our top giving level, beyond the annual fund, the people who really step up in a major way. The levels for this society, or this league rather, are $250K gifts or $1 million gifts or more. Those are people who, not everybody is blessed to be able to do that, but man, if someone's going to be that sort of generous with us, we want to really go above and beyond in our stewardship of that effort and say thank you. They're going to have access to different spaces and be around the teams with all access credentials for basketball games and football games. And they're going to get to go on some trips, like our first trip to LA for a football game out there against either USC or UCLA. When we know what that is, we're going to charter a flight for that group, and just go again above and beyond with our access and benefits. We're going to do some things around the Maui Invitational next year, which, by the way, we've been told by the tournament, I think we've sold more packages than any school ever has. We've blown through any allotment that they had planned for us. And it's actually the biggest trip we've ever done, even outnumbering any bowl game we've ever done, which is crazy when you think about capacity of a football stadium versus that little arena down in
Lena.
Exactly. So really excited about those things. And as you alluded to, I mean, I think it is important from a diversity inclusion standpoint to recognize someone like Lamar Lundy. The fact that we really hadn't done more to recognize not only our first Black scholarship player at Purdue, our first Black scholarship football player, but someone who was a basketball and football MVP and all conference player in both sports, a member of the Fearsome Foursome, a really storied NFL career. During COVID, I think there was a lot of time for a lot of us to reflect on our history and how we did a better job highlighting it. And his was one of the first names that jumped off to me personally as I started doing my part to help in that effort. I was like, holy cow, Lamar Lundy went to Purdue. I can't believe that. Yeah. I mean, I'll admit it. I didn't know it prior to COVID. And when I saw that, it just kind of got in my head of like, we got to do something. And this just seemed like a really fitting opportunity because, again, this is a way to acknowledge those who have been most helpful in our efforts to transform Purdue athletics and take it forward. And that's exactly what Lamar Lundy did with his decision to come to Purdue all those years ago as our first Black scholarship football player. So it just really worked out well together as a way to do something that probably should have been done a while back in honoring Lamar. But also do it in a way that pushes us forward and acknowledges some of the great things that are going on today.
Yeah, terrific athlete, historic in a number of. Can you imagine being an MVP in basketball and in football? And this is in the 1930s in terms of where playing two sports at that time started to become very rare, and he was certainly in that mode as well. Tim, safe travels back. Get through this rain, and we appreciate so much your time. Always interesting. And here's to a fun weekend for Purdue folks in Chicago and maybe Columbus, maybe New York or wherever, maybe even Houston. Who knows? Yeah. It's going to be a fun few weeks.
Yeah, let's have fun in Minneapolis with the women's team this weekend too, and at home let's finish off strong. Win on senior night. And I thank you, Alan, for everything you and your team do. I so enjoy reading the content that y'all put out. Y'all do such a great job covering us. The folks that subscribe to your content, we're the best fan base in the country. I told Coach Walters when he got the job, I said, listen, man, you're not going to believe how these people fill out these stadiums, how much they care. And I think you guys do a great job of helping us with that. And to that end, talking about your team, please let Brian know he's in our thoughts and prayers. Miss having that guy around. He does such a great job covering Purdue basketball. Mike's doing an awesome job this year in his stead, but appreciate everything you guys do.
All right, I will definitely pass that along. And Brian's still cranking out those videos, so we appreciate that too. And we will be back. Speaking of Mike Carmin, Mike and Tom Dienhart will join us for segment 3. Tim, thanks again. We'll be back in 2 minutes on Gold and Black Live.